Live from the American Gulf Coast, it's the Dave Nemo Show.
Well, the question is, when was the future? And the answer is the future was yesterday, and that is why we call our series with Jane Jazrawy from CarriersEdge, The Future Was Yesterday. Because we think we are moving ahead in a straight line, but we're really not. You know the old expression, 2 steps up, 1 step down, 2 steps up, 1 step down. You finally get to where you're going, but in a sense, you're kind of circling that ladder. We're going to talk about 3 areas where we have been circling here in terms of where we think where we're going, but we're not stopping to look back to where we've been, and we find out that, holy cow, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I'm being real cryptic here because Jane Jazrawy is about to join us to kind of pull the curtain back on what I'm talking about and some of the research she has done about the first engines to be built, the new engines that are being built, and the way we are now getting our information and entertainment. It's all a big circle. Hey, Jane, thanks for being in the circle. You're at the center of the circle. Good morning.
Yeah, I'm in the center of the hula hoop. I was thinking about this morning, is that, the research that I do for this segment, it's kind of weird because we don't talk about training, which is what I do. And I'm not always talking about training. But what I do and how I built my company is really about research. And so doing this kind of like figuring out what happened in the past, what's happening in the future, how it relates is all very, it feels like it's right in my sweet spot. It's right where I do well.
We're going to circle back now to the diesel engine. And I was talking, in fact, you and I had a discussion. I was in the backyard it was a week ago, I guess. You and I had a phone conversation. And we were talking about diesel and the fact that a lot of folks didn't know that it's called diesel fuel, diesel engine, running on diesel. There are country music songs, with diesel in the title. And that was, that name didn't just get made up. Well, somebody made it up, but it was their family name. Rudolph Diesel is the guy who invented the diesel engine. And he basically had his first engine out in like 1897, if I'm not mistaken. And he was replacing the steam engine, and it was because of efficiency. Yeah, he was an engineer par excellence. But one of the things he pointed out was that 90% of the energy in a steam engine is wasted. The engine only uses 10% of that energy. What can we do about that? And he figured out a way to go from 10% to 75%, and that's his diesel engine. But Jane, the surprise for people, and here's where the circle comes, what was he burning in that diesel engine?
It was biodiesel. He was burning vegetables, basically.
Yeah,
it was crazy,
oil.
which is, it was. Yeah, I think peanut oil was one of the things. There were other things that he was doing with it. He was, but he designed it originally to work off of peanut oil and vegetable oils and things like that. And it was also the petroleum combustible fuel was also something that it was really versatile, and which was really kind of interesting that we're going back to biodiesel and going back to looking for alternatives to run engines on, and when it was already there. I think the big difference is that people didn't realize when you adopt a technology that creates pollution, it's fine in a small part, but when it's adopted everywhere, then it becomes more of a concern, and then you're starting to look back and seeing what the the issues are, or how to solve those issues.
Yeah, yeah. You know, when you push something far and hard enough, eventually it's going to push back. And that's what he did inside the engine. As opposed to having a spark or a fire ignite the fuel to cause the explosion in the cylinder, he figured that if I can pressurize that peanut oil enough, it's going to do that on its own without any help from me. And it's just amazing that we, in the past 30 years, have just reinvented or rediscovered something that we thought was a new discovery. Nobody knew when biodiesel and soy. You remember when biodiesel came out, a few decades ago, and everybody was, the first thing was, oh, wait a minute now, what about our food supply? They're taking our food away from us and they're going to put it in these engines. Remember that?
I know. Food is getting more expensive because we're putting it all in the engines.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like, because nobody knew that it had already been done and that it had already been something that people could, you can balance that. The one thing that I really like about Rudolf Diesel's story is how crazy his life was. He had a very, very bizarre life. He was born in Paris, and he got sent away to another family when he was a kid. And then then he went back to his parents. Then his parents got deported to England, and he didn't graduate. So he was really, really smart. And this is where the whole, become an engineer came in. But then he couldn't graduate because he got typhoid a couple of times. And then when and this actually, getting typhoid and not graduating with his class actually kind of helped him in the creation of the diesel engine, because he was able to, what he did was, because he didn't graduate and go to school, he went and sort of worked for somebody else, and he worked for an engineering firm. And so he kind of cut his teeth on, building things and design and that kind of thing. And then when he finally did go to university, that was when he had already gotten this interest in engines. And he kept on getting, twice, I think, he nearly was killed by working on steam engines when he was trying to investigate how to do the diesel engine. So he was like health and safety before health and safety became a thing.
Another circle. Well, let's circle the wagons for just a minute and hear from some of our other sponsors here on the program, and then we'll be right back with The Future Was Yesterday. Jane Jazrawy, of course, joins us from Carrier's Edge, the inventor of best fleets to drive for. And Jane, I'm going to ask you a little bit about best fleets, too, before we let you get away this morning as well.
Sounds like a plan.
Freight is moving at Cree Carrier and Schaefer Trucking. We are growing, and our customers keep growing with us. If you want to be part of a company that appreciates what you do and rewards you for it, you should check out Cree Carrier Corporation. We're looking for safe drivers that have at least 1 year's experience and take their jobs seriously. Then we reward you with great pay and some real serious benefits. Freight's moving, so check out Creed and Schaefer today. Go to CreeCarrier.com and find the right job for you.
Check out the new over-the-top lineup at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants. 3 gigantic sandwiches loaded with flavor. Try the chicken parm stack, the big country combo, or the ultimate smash melt. The ultimate smash melt. 2 delicious smash burger patties, surrounded by 2 grilled cheese sandwiches. 2 sandwiches in 1. Visit your favorite Country Pride or Iron Skillet restaurant and come hungry.
Available for dine-in only at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants inside TA or Petro Travel Centers.
I've tried.
Jane Jazrawy is with us, of course, from Carrier's Edge. on this edition of The Future Was Yesterday. And we're going to circle back again to something else in terms of powering motor vehicles. But Jane, speaking of power, the Best Fleets to Drive For program is an incredibly powerful program that, again, really enhances the industry and makes the industry better and safer.
Well, I hope so. That's the idea, is that you look at what you've done, like, so fleets can be nominated by a driver, go through our questionnaire, look at what they've done, look at, talk about how they can improve within their own company. And then they actually get feedback from us based on where they stand with other companies, as well as driver feedback about what they're doing. So this is something that it's the 2026 program is going to start the day after Labor Day, open for driver nominations. And I'm always looking for, because I think nothing is going to change and then something does. So it's always exciting to go through a new edition of the Best Fleet to Drive For.
Organic is a good word for Best Fleets, I think.
Organic? Yeah.
Organic.
I think, yeah. Yeah, you can see the development. I think this is why it's interesting to go back to the future, because, when we started doing Best Fleets, things were so different. The technology was definitely not there. I remember one person saying to me, you only give the award to people who have technology. And I was like, well, because it's helpful. It's not, we weren't giving a tech award out, but what was happening was the people who were early adopters of technology and were trying to put it in, not all at once, but do it gradually and put in processes that work. When you do that and you have change management, your drivers agree with you, it was working really well, and there was a lot of efficiency. So now everyone has technology. There's no one that can run a trucking company without technology.
No, indeed. No, indeed. I'm going to read something real quick from Rudolf Diesel. There's a book that was entitled Diesel Engines for Land and Marine Work. And Diesel said in 1900, a small diesel engine was exhibited by the Auto Company, which on the suggestion of the French government was run on peanut oil, and operated so well that very few people were aware of the fact. The motor was built for ordinary oils and without any modification was run on vegetable oil. I have recently repeated these experiments on a large scale with full success and entire confirmation of the results formerly obtained. And those are the actual words of Rudolph himself. You said he had a very unusual life, pretty hard life too. His parents gave him away when he was 9 months old. Like, why do you do that? Evidently, they had some real money problems and wound up getting deported and everything. So he had a rough. In fact, I think his dad, he wanted to go to college, and his dad didn't want him to go. He wanted him to go to work.
Yeah, he was doing, absolutely. Well, when you don't have a lot of money, especially at that time, you used your children as, you sent them off to work to help support the family. My favorite is his death. I think that is crazy. Yeah. He gets on a boat, or not a boat. He gets on a ship. I live on an island, so people would be very angry with me calling them boats. He gets on a ship, and he basically never gets off. And no one knew what happened to him. His bed was made, his clothes were there was no sign of anything. But his wife he left a bag with his wife before he went on the ship, and he left her 20,000 German marks. At that point, he was living in Germany, and he left her 20,000 German marks, which was about $120,000 back then. I don't know what it would be now. Probably a lot.
I do.
How much?
I did the math. You ready? Rudolf Diesel left his wife a bag with $120,000. It was in German marks, as you mentioned. So $120,000. This was in 1913, September 29th. He died, or didn't die. And that $120,000 today would be $3,876,000. $351.52. So he left her well over $3,800,000. So nobody knows what happened. So a lot of the official thing is that he committed suicide. And you have to wonder,
Right.
why would a guy like that commit suicide? He had money. He had a wonderful wife. Now he's got a great life and he's famous. So what's up with that? And then others say that he was murdered. And Jimmy Mack had the author of that book on not too long ago about the murder of Rudolph Diesel. And others say he's like Elvis or Jimmy Hoffa, that he faked his death and wound up here in the U.S. working at GM. So,
conspiracy theories abound. I have no idea. I think it's crazy that he just disappeared. I mean, this guy had quite the life, and obviously was a really, he was a great designer and a great inventor. And often when people are really creative like that, there's a lot of internal struggle. And especially when you have a childhood like that. So who knows what he was thinking, but man, somebody should make a movie about this.
they really should, and there are documentaries, but a dramatic movie with actors, and the whole thing would be pretty cool, actually. Pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
one
so.
of the
There's
things
a story
you
here.
point out when you talk about this too is the fact that he almost one of his engines, one of his steam engines, blew up, almost killed him.
Yes, a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
This was not, well, I guess this is the problem with steam engines, is that they were dangerous. It wasn't just that they weren't very useful or that they weren't very efficient, but they were actually dangerous and that they could blow up. There's like hot steam is dangerous, and if that steam escapes, you can be severely burned and all of that. So that was one of the things that he was trying to solve for, is trying to figure out another way to get some combustion going rather than using steam. And at the same time, other people, well, it was around the same time, but other people were experimenting with electric cars as well, which is crazy because, I thought that electric cars were new this time around in the 2000s when they came out. But no, they were actually invented in the late 1800s.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Okay, the first cars were battery operated.
Right.
What? Oh,
I know. The first ones.
The first ones. Now, what? Okay, what are we doing today? We're talking about battery operated vehicles, and what don't we have? We don't have the charging stations. So,
well, we do now, but
we do now, but not nearly enough, though, especially for trucking.
Right.
So
Yeah,
we don't
exactly.
have. Okay, so let's circle back to even the late 1800s when the cars really went out on the road, but they were invented as early as the 1830s, before the Civil War here in the U.S. But they didn't have charging. They didn't have rechargeable batteries at the time. So it was sort of like a cool thing that you could take this car, this horseless carriage, and ride it around for a while till the batteries died. Then you had to buy new batteries. What if those batteries were rechargeable back then? Would we even be having this discussion? All of these questions, right? If they only knew.
Well, actually, they did invent rechargeable batteries, and it wasn't because they weren't rechargeable that electric cars failed, because during the decades where they were experimenting with manufacturing cars. So people were, trying to do this horseless carriage. And you think of Henry Ford. Henry Ford was not the first guy at all. There was many, many people before that. In the 1830s, it was actually a guy from Scotland who started trying to figure out a motorized carriage that was going to run.
Robert
and
Anderson.
They eventually got a rechargeable battery. So I guess what they did was they got in the car, they went for a while, and then, either you carry another battery with you or you just stop and leave. I don't know what they did when they were testing this thing. But the electric cars were actually, people were playing with them for a really long time. And they were more, so there was a whole fleet of taxis that were electric. Sometime, kind of in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was an actual company called the Electric Vehicle Company in the early 1900s. They had more than 600 electric cabs operating in New York and Boston and Baltimore. And so it was actually happening. And the reason, can you guess the reason that the electric car died?
Gasoline?
Dun, dun, dun. No. Well, it kind of gasoline, but it was because they were more expensive. They couldn't compete with gasoline because electric was more expensive.
Yeah. Gasoline that a few years earlier was considered a waste product.
Yeah, and so gasoline, they had gasoline, but the problem was hand cranks with gasoline cars. And women didn't want to drive them because they were noisy and dirty, and you've got long skirts on and you don't want to be hand cranking. So like that was not that women are, more inclined to drive electric cars or not, but if you think about what you had to wear back then, and trying to get in and out of a car and crank it, you weren't equipped. If you were wearing a dress and a corset and all of the stuff that you had to wear, people are, you're not going to want to do it. So they preferred electric cars because they could just get in and go. And what happened was when they got rid of the hand crank, when they figured out how to do the ignition, that was pretty much when it died, because they were more expensive and there was no other benefits to an electric car that couldn't be, a gasoline powered car was just as good. So that was where it went.
And gas was everywhere, and it was pretty cheap too. When I started driving back in the mid 60s, gasoline down here in the New Orleans area, it's like 29.9 was and sometimes it was down to 27, and diesel fuel was like 15 cents.
Oh yeah, I mean it was crazy cheap even when I was a kid. Well, I was a kid a long time ago. When in the 80s, it was it was cheap, and don't forget there weren't that many cars. Like it wasn't like everybody had a car back then.
Yeah, for sure.
So gas wasn't an issue because there wasn't everybody in the world wasn't using it. And so it's really interesting how we were playing with that technology. And they had car chargers. They actually did have chargers back then, too.
That I did not know. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was, so that cab company that they had that used electric cabs, they had a battery swapping station to address the recharging thing. And they had this battery swapping station, which was in an ice rink. So they converted an ice rink to a battery swapping station so that they could run all of these cabs. And I think that's really cool. I think this whole idea is that it's already been done.
Jane Jazrawy, who says, an ice rink is cool. And that concludes... Oh, as always, Jane, thank you very much. Jane Jazrawy, everybody. Check out things at CarriersEdge.com. Go to RadioNemo.com and go to the sponsors page. Carrier's Edge, best fleets to drive for.